She lived in a little cottage at the edge of town. No one really knew her name. People just called her Martha, whether that was her real name or not. Children whispered tales about her in the playground. Teenagers joked that she was a witch, and grown-ups barely gave her more than a glance on their way to work or the store. She was old. Her back curved from years of quiet labor, and her hands were always gloved even in summer. Her hair was thin and silvery white, tucked into a woolen cap year-round, and she rarely spoke. But when it snowed, when the first flakes began to fall, that's when the real story began. That's when something strange happened, something no one understood. That's when the dog came. He was a large dog, black as night, with golden eyes that glowed like lanterns in the snow. No one in the neighborhood had ever seen him before. No one claimed him. He didn't bark, didn't howl, didn't even whimper. He just appeared always during heavy snowfall and stood silently at the woman's door. She would open it sometimes even before he knocked and let him in. Without a word, she would close the door behind him, and the next morning the dog would be gone. The town spoke about it. Rumors spread. Was it a spirit, a ghost, a creature sent to protect her? No one had answers. The children dared each other to sneak up and peek through the frosted windows when the dog arrived. But none of them ever managed to see him inside. It was like he vanished into thin air. Only Martha knew the truth, but she never spoke of it, no. One knew that this ritual had been going on for more than 15 years. No one knew that the dog had once been her son's. That son. Long buried under a forgotten gravestone at the edge of a military cemetery, had died in a distant war, one of those quiet, unglorious ones no one really talks about. He had been 23. His dog, a gift from a shelter when he was just a boy of 12, had stayed behind with Martha. The dog had been restless after her son died. It would bark at nothing, whimper at shadows, and stare at the door like he was waiting. It refused to eat for weeks. And then, the night of the first snowfall that winter, he disappeared. Martha cried for days. But part of her understood. Years passed. And then, on a night filled with falling snow, he returned. Older, slower, but unmistakably the same. He stood at her door, just like he used to. She opened it, unsure whether it was a dream or a miracle. But when he stepped inside, gently nuzzled her palm, curled up at the foot of her fireplace. She knew something had brought him back. Each year after that, only during snow, he came. She never chained him, never kept him from leaving. She simply waited for that one sacred night each winter when the snow began to fall like memories returning from a distant past. Then she would light the fire, make a pot of tea, sit in the old armchair, facing the window waiting. And sure enough, the dog would come. He looked older now. Each year, his steps slower, his breath heavier, but his eyes. Those golden eyes held stories of her son, of battles fought, of love and loss, of loyalty so deep it refused to die. The townspeople remained curious. Some tried to follow the paw prints in the snow. But they always vanished just a few feet from her home. Like the dog was a whisper of something no longer tied to the earth. One snowy evening, just after Christmas, the snowfall was heavier than usual. The kind that silences everything, the cars, the voices, the noise of the world. Martha sat in her chair, breathing slowly. Her legs had grown weaker, her hands thinner, but her heart beat steadily, in sync with something far greater than herself. And then, through the veil of white falling outside, she saw him. Just a shape at first. A silhouette in the snow, then those eyes. He limped more than usual, but he still came. She stood painfully, but determined, opened the door. The cold wind rushed in. He entered, gently brushing past her. She closed the door behind him. He walked, slower than ever, to the fireplace, curled up, and let out a long, low sigh. She sat beside him this time, not in her chair but on the floor. Beside the creature that had crossed the impossible to return to her again and again, she whispered, "You came back." He looked up. She smiled. In that room, warmed by memory and flickering flame, time stopped. But something was different this time. Outside, the snow fell harder. The storm raged. but inside it was calm, peaceful, almost too quiet. She knew this. Might be the last time, and yet she didn't cry. Not that night, because real love doesn't need words. That night, as the snowstorm roared against the old wooden walls of the cottage, the elderly woman sat beside the sleeping dog in silence. Her frail fingers brushed gently over his thinning fur, each stroke a silent hymn of remembrance. His breathing was slow and deep, the way it used to be when he'd nap by her son's feet after long days of play. She closed her eyes, and suddenly she was no longer in that cold winter. She was back in time years ago when laughter filled this same room. When her son was alive, he had been so full of life. A boy who climbed trees too fast, got scraped knees too often, and always came home with a story. He was bright, kind, and stubborn in a way that warmed her heart. On his 12th birthday, he begged for a dog. She didn't have much, but she managed. They went to the shelter, and there, curled in a corner, was a scared little black pup with golden eyes. "He looks like he's been waiting for me," her son had said. He named him Soldier. From that day on, they were inseparable. The boy grew. And so did Soldier. Through middle school and high school, Soldier was always there waiting outside classrooms. Lying on the porch when his boy was late, even sneaking into town behind him like a silent guardian. Then came the day when her son told her he had enlisted. She remembered the stillness in the air that day, the way the wind didn't move, the way even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Her heart sank, but she smiled. "It's what I need to do, Ma," he had said. "I have to go." Soldier stood at the door when he left. He didn't bark. Watched. And when the bus disappeared, he whined deep. Aching sound that pierced the heart of a mother already broken. For months, letters came. Then, fewer. Then silence, then the knock. It wasn't supposed to be a knock. It should have been his voice. But instead, it was a man in uniform, hat clutched to his chest. Sorrow etched deep into every line of his face. She collapsed before he even said the words. Soldier refused to move from the door for days. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just waited. She tried to console him, but it was as if they both shared the same shattered soul. Then, one snowy night, he vanished, she thought. He had gone to die, but he hadn't. Now, years later, that same dog lay by her side. His fur grayed with age, his muscles weakened. But those eyes, those golden eyes, still held the light of a bond that refused to die. She whispered to him, a story of the past, of the boy who once danced through this home, the laughter they had lost, of the pain time could never quite heal. And then something unexpected happened. The dog raised his head and looked toward the door. She followed his gaze. There was nothing, just the snow. But Soldier stood up, limped slowly toward it, stared. A chill ran through her, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something unspoken. She stood, slowly, painfully. Her bones protested, but her heart pushed her forward. She opened the door, and there, standing beyond the threshold, was a young man. He looked exactly like her son. Same eyes, same smile, same old green military jacket. But he wasn't breathing. He wasn't real. Her breath caught. The soldier looked up at her and back at the figure, then took a step forward. She trembled. Was it a dream? Was it death? The boy, her son, or something like him, raised a hand. Soldier wagged his tail. The wind howled. She looked down at Soldier and saw the truth in his eyes. It was time. Soldier turned, licked her hand gently, and stepped into the snow. The figure welcomed him, and they both vanished into the white. She stood there, barefoot on the cold wooden floor, the snowflakes kissing her skin. But she felt no cold, just peace, the kind that only comes after a lifetime of waiting. She closed the door. The room was quiet again, too quiet. She sank back into her chair, and for the first time in decades, she allowed herself to cry. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude. Soldier had come back to guide her son home. Or maybe it had been her son all along, guiding Soldier back. The snowstorm passed by morning. The sun glinted on the thick white blanket that covered the earth, turning every tree branch into crystal. But inside the little cottage at the edge of town, everything felt empty. The fireplace had long since gone cold. The warmth that once hummed in the room was gone, and the silence this time was absolute. The elderly woman sat alone in her chair. Soldier was gone, truly gone. She didn't move much that day, or the next. She simply stared at the spot where he had last laid down. The faint indent in the rug remained, like a memory pressed into fabric. For days, she didn't light the fire. She didn't cook. She didn't even cry. She just waited without knowing for what. People in town noticed. The baker who'd once delivered bread to her door every Friday found the loaf untouched for a week. The boy who shoveled her walkway every winter noticed no tracks around the cottage. The mail carrier said he knocked 3 times, but no one answered. Whispers started again.
How?
Maybe the old woman finally passed. Maybe the dog took her with him. But none dared enter the cottage, not out of fear, but out of something older respect. They knew something sacred had happened that winter night, and then spring arrived. The snow melted. The trees budded. The wind lost its bite, but still, Martha didn't come to town. Until one morning, April 12th, exactly something changed. A letter arrived. Not one from the government, not from a friend, but a faded, weather-worn envelope without a stamp. Just her name written in a hand she hadn't seen in decades. The mail carrier, a young woman named Jenna, hesitated as she held it. It had no return address, no markings, nothing to trace where it came from. She slid it through the old metal slot anyway, curious. Inside the cottage, Martha sat quietly at her table, a thin cup of tea in her hand. She heard the soft shuffle of paper falling. She didn't move at first, but something in her chest stirred. She rose, walked to the door, and picked it up. The handwriting made her knees buckle. It was her son's. Hands trembling, she opened the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper. A note: "Ma, if you're reading this, I don't know how it got to you. I wrote it years ago. Maybe someone found it. Maybe Soldier brought it. I don't know. But I want you to know something. I didn't die alone. And Soldier didn't vanish. He found me. I don't know how. Right. But he did. In the middle of chaos. In the worst heat of war. I heard a bark. It was him. I thought I was hallucinating. But then he came. Real solid, my boy. He stayed with me in my last hour. Never left. I don't think he ever went home again. Maybe he walked the world looking for a way to bring my soul back to you. And if he's with you now, then he did it. Don't cry, Ma. We're okay. We've always been okay. Love, your son." Her hands trembled. The tears came in waves, silent and powerful. She clutched the letter to her chest like it was a heartbeat, and outside the wind carried the scent of spring. For the first time in years, she opened her window, let the air in, and breathed that day. She lit a candle, she cooked a real meal, she set 2 plates, one for herself, one for Soldier. That night, she slept without fear, and in her dreams, she saw them, her son and Soldier, running through a field of green, laughing free. The war gone, the pain gone. Only light remained in town. They said the old woman had changed. She walked a little straighter, smiled at the children who once feared her, even fed the strays near the marketplace. But every winter, as the first snowfall fell, she lit a lantern. Outside her door, not because she was waiting, but because she was remembering and honoring. Some said they still saw the dog on snowy nights, just a glimpse, a shadow at the edge of the woods, flicker between trees, set of golden eyes watching quietly from afar. Maybe it was a ghost. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was the kind of loyalty the world forgets exists. But Martha never saw him again. She didn't need to. He had kept his promise. He had brought her son home, and in doing so, it found peace. Years passed, like pages turning in a book slowly being forgotten on a dusty shelf. Martha grew older. Her hair, once silver, turned as white as snow. Her hands, once strong, became fragile and veined. But her eyes, they held the same quiet strength. The kind forged by grief, by hope, by something deeper than time. She no longer feared death. She had already stood face to face with the unknown and found peace in its silence. Her neighbors, once distant and uncertain, now waved warmly when she passed. Children no longer whispered about the mysterious woman at the edge of town. They brought her wildflowers, drew chalk pictures on her walkway, asked her about the dog. She never gave them the full truth. Some stories are too sacred to tell, but she would smile gently and say, "He was a good boy, the best." Every winter, when the first snowflake fell, she lit a lantern on her porch. People came to expect it, looking for it the way others looked for a church bell or a lighthouse. It became a symbol not of loss, but of love that endures beyond all things. And then, one winter, the lantern remained lit. No footprints in the snow, no warm light in the window, just silence. Martha had passed peacefully in her sleep. A smile, still resting on her lips, a faded letter clutched gently in her hand. On the nightstand beside her, a framed photograph of a boy in uniform and a black dog with golden eyes sat quietly, watching. The town mourned her like they would a grandmother. Her funeral was small, but full of love. He told stories of the kind things she'd done without recognition, of the gentle strength in her voice, of the mystery and beauty of the bond she shared with that dog. She was buried beside her son, just as she had once asked in a letter kept folded in a Bible. No one knew, she read. And the dog? Well, some said the snow fell a little heavier that winter. Some claimed they saw golden eyes watching from the woods. A few even said they heard a low, gentle bark at her door the night she died. But no one saw him again, not truly, until 30. Years later, a new family had moved into the old cottage. A young woman, recently widowed, and her little boy, a quiet child who barely spoke since his father passed in a car accident. They didn't know the history of the place, not really, just that it was old, charming, and somehow peaceful. The boy liked to sit by the window when it snowed. He'd stare for hours as if waiting for something. One night deep in December, a storm rolled in soft but thick. Snow blanketed the town in a hush. The boy stood at the window longer than usual. Then he called to his mother. "There's a dog," he whispered. She rushed over, confused. They had no dog. She looked out the window, but saw only snow. Where? By the door. When she opened, there were no paw prints, nothing. But the boy stepped outside, barefoot in the snow, completely unafraid. He looked around, then pointed to the trees. "He says he used to live here." She stared at her son, unsure whether to cry or laugh. Who says, "The dog." That night, for the first time since her husband's death, her son slept through the night peacefully, smiling. Over the next few weeks, he talked about the dog often. He says his name was Soldier. He says the snow makes it easier to visit. He says he's not here for long. At first, she dismissed it as a child's way of coping, an imaginary friend. But then she found a small envelope tucked under the old floorboard while cleaning yellowed. Untouched, and sealed with wax. Inside was a note written in handwriting she didn't recognize. Out. To the one who finds this home next, this house holds memory. This house holds love. If the dog visits you, don't be afraid. He only comes when needed. He only stays when the heart calls him. And when he leaves, know that someone, somewhere, is being made whole again. Take care of him, even if you cannot see. He will take care of you. There was no name. But the mother folded the note gently, placed it in a frame, and hung it above the fireplace. And every winter, when the first snow fell, she and her son lit a lantern on the porch. No one ever saw the dog clearly again. But on certain nights, the snow fell just right, and the wind carried a particular stillness. People claimed they felt something brush gently past them. A presence, a warmth, a loyal heart that never left. Because Soldier wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian of grief, of love, of broken hearts trying to heal. And he only came when the snow fell. to remind us that those we love never truly leave.